Good afternoon, Nakamoto Nation. We're here to talk about what's been the hottest trend of the last 12, 13 months. Here with some legends of industry who have diamond hands. So, Eric, I think you started stacking almost a year ago exactly. Fold, you've been public for 100 days now. Simon, you kicked us off only 13 months ago. Tell us a little bit about what year one, day one's been like running a Bitcoin strategy in the public markets.
Well, what a difference a year makes. Simon and I were up here last year, fresh off announcing the strategy, and we felt like lone voices crying in the wilderness a little bit. It's kind of shocking to both of us that it took someone 4 years after Michael Saylor started doing it to finally do it and pull the trigger, and now it feels like everyone's pulling the trigger. But it's been a great year. It's been unbelievably exhilarating for our company and our stock. It's awakened us as a former zombie, and so couldn't be happier.
Yeah, as you said, Tyler, it's been 100 days, and it's been a pretty extraordinary moment. I got to be with 40 Bitcoiners who have been building a Bitcoin company and opened the opening bell at NASDAQ a couple months ago. And it was truly surreal to see Bitcoiners opening the capital markets. It's something that I never thought would have happened, and especially because we had very humble beginnings. We actually launched the Fold app originally at Bitcoin 2019, right out of the garage. And today we're sitting on the stage, public company, Bitcoin treasuries. I couldn't have imagined the journey.
It's an absolute honor and privilege to be here. It's almost 14 months into our journey, and I have to say it's been absolutely incredible. As Eric said, he and I were on stage about a year ago in Nashville at a time when we were just presenting to the world our Bitcoin treasury strategy, and I can tell you I did not imagine we would have this level of interest and excitement. You know, we're all creating a brand new strategy here, a brand new category of companies called Bitcoin treasury companies, and this is just the very beginning.
So, yeah, let's give it up for these gents. So I was having a conversation with another public market CEO earlier this week, and he described the experience of running a Bitcoin treasury company as if you're racing in the Kentucky Derby, except you're not the horse, you're the jockey just trying to hang on for the ride while you're being sprayed with mud in the face constantly. Tell us what it's been like at the helm of these companies, especially amid the volatility in Bitcoin, in equity markets, in macro conditions. What's that been like?
That's right. It's intense. It's a 24/7 job, as you can imagine. There's just no rest, and it's exciting. So it's you don't want to get off that horse. You just want to win the race. For us, it was really interesting because when we started, we took basically all of our cash. We had about $60 million of cash on our balance sheet, and over a short period of time, we bought Bitcoin. And then literally finished, made the announcement. I think we bought in the 60s. All of a sudden, there was this announcement literally the next morning that we're announcing that there would be finally be this Mt. Gox distribution. And Bitcoin plunged about 25%, subsequently. And I kind of looked at my board members who I had just talked into taking all our cash to buy Bitcoin, and just scared to death that they were going to rip me a new one. But they ended up really backing me and really wanting to buy more, and that's what we did. We kind of relished that opportunity to average down, and we've been doing it ever since.
Well, I feel like doing this for 12 months like these gentlemen have here is a lifetime. So I'm coming from the perspective of 100 days in, and I'd say it's fairly accurate, but I can't pretend to be an expert quite yet. I'm truly learning from many of you all here, but we've been building for Bitcoiners for 6 years, and it's been an incredible journey to build on something that you can tremendously believe in, that you could only imagine you would have moments like Bitcoin 2025 with the world looking at Bitcoin as a solution. That was something we could only dreamed about. And so for us, having that vision, that dream, at the same time living through Bitcoin's very violent cycles of up cycle, down cycle, trying to build a business, and not only that, doing it with our customers who have dedicated themselves, their savings to Bitcoin. So it's an incredibly emotional journey. But for us, it's always been about how do we just align ourselves with our customers, with Bitcoin. And for us, that meant day one, if we're asking our customers to save in Bitcoin, that Bitcoin is the better asset to store your life savings into, we wanted to walk that same journey with them. And so it was really started at a very humble beginning. And we found along the way that Bitcoin was our ballast. It helped us survive through moments that I think other companies wouldn't have. And today we have more value in our Bitcoin treasury than all the money and capital we've ever raised as a company. And only a Bitcoin treasury company can do that. It's truly amazing.
As a former derivatives trader at Goldman Sachs, the one thing I savor most is volatility. Volatility is not something to be afraid of. It's something that can be harnessed. And so if you think of Bitcoin as a long-dated call option on the future of money, on a better money, there isn't a better input into creating value there than high volatility. And so that's something that I think is something we ought to understand and embrace and not be scared of. Now, we're all taught, in those who had the misfortune of going to business school, would have wasted 2 or 3 years to learn that volatility is something that reduces your cost of equity, increases your cost of equity. It's something that isn't good for you. But in the space of Bitcoin, it's absolutely great. Now, our stock has, in the last 14 months, traded limit up or limit down 14% approximately of all the trading days. That's incredible volatility, and we can really use that to harness our ability to raise capital. And so our way to raise capital is the equivalent of the US at-the-money equity offering structure. We have moving strike warrants, and because of the volatility, thanks to the volatility, we've been able to raise about $650 million in the last 60 trading days. And so volatility is a good thing, and something that we ought to embrace and be very pleased about.
I want to come back to that harnessing volatility, but first, Eric, with your story, living through that experience of adopting Bitcoin and instantly having your conviction tested, what was that like? Where did you draw that conviction on to not only hold on, but to keep buying Bitcoin day one under the microscope as a public market CEO?
Yeah. I wanted to hide under the mattress, basically. I was looking for a place to hide. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to call my fellow board members, but I think that we have a thesis. We have a really strong thesis. It's what I think we all share this thesis, is that Bitcoin has massive upside. For us, it's digital gold. Bitcoin is at least a 10x from here, probably a lot more than that. And so if you believe that, and that's what my fellow board members really said to me, then it's just an incredible opportunity to buy more. I just didn't expect to hear him say it right then. I was a little bit kind of embarrassed, but how can you predict these things? But volatility on the negative side, like that's an example. Volatility is what's really kept a lot of companies from adopting a Bitcoin treasury standard. And as Simon's noted that, it's really, they got it backwards.
In terms of harnessing that volatility, you mentioned, Simon. I think Michael Saylor likes to say that there's kind of two kinds of volatility. There's exogenous or bad volatility, which is what you learn about in business school, that's created by poor decisions of management, that's created by a product failing or a lawsuit that drives volatility to the downside. But on the flip side, you have endogenous volatility of Bitcoin as the core asset that you can harness. So could you elaborate a little bit? How can you harness that on your balance sheet? How does it become a productive force for the company?
Yeah, so volatility is very interesting because a lot of people seem to think that Bitcoin has more volatility than a traditional business. A traditional business that I used to run has all sorts of factors that can result in things going wrong. In Bitcoin, you can very clearly define and harness the volatility that exists. And so specifically for us, we're running a volatility engine. We take the sentiment of our investors, people are buying and selling the stock. Our volatility is 180 vol, 190 vol. It's quite incredible. And so that enables us to raise capital really efficiently. And so when we raise capital in the Japanese markets, our competitors have to raise money at massive discounts to the market price. We're able to sell shares at the market. And in fact, I believe that over time, we should be able to sell shares at a premium to the market because of the volatility. And so those who subscribe to securities that we issue, they really value that volatility component. And so just think about it as the higher the volatility, the more excitement there is, there's more interest in your company. The last thing you want is to be a company that barely trades, that goes up and down 20 basis points a day. That may be good for some portfolios, but you're not going to have the outsized returns that is made possible by volatility.
Now, I know each of you landed in this seat with a very different path to the public market, operating in different jurisdictions. As of the last 48 hours at this conference, I think I've talked to probably 20-odd companies that want to become Bitcoin treasury companies all over the world. Can you share a little bit what that experience has been like? You guys make it look pretty easy.
Okay. Well, it's been great. We were talking about how Bitcoin has become such an important part of your value. And for us, that's so true. It's really helped us during a really sharp downturn in our healthcare business. So we're a little bit different because we came at this with a very strong, high margin, growing healthcare business. And it actually coincidentally kind of turned downward as we started buying Bitcoin. And so now most of our value is in Bitcoin, but we still feel very positively about our healthcare business. So there could be a time when our healthcare business is there to kind of support us if there's a downturn in Bitcoin. So we're really well set up, I think, with a two-pronged strategy. And so I think that's really important for new companies doing this to think about being able to have that buffer that you might need in a downturn on one side of your business. I think it's going to end up being a really a boon for us, and we kind of need it to be there as a ballast.
Yeah, I think when we set out and myself, my team looked at dedicating essentially our lives to Bitcoin, it was dedicating our lives to the volatility that's inherent in that. And we had an insight, which I think many people in here do, that Bitcoin is extremely volatile, but it's volatile to the upside. And if you can recognize that, that's the opportunity that you have, that's your edge. And so for Fold, we have always positioned the company to be maximally exposed to Bitcoin, also known as the best performing asset of the last decade, and Bitcoin as the fastest growing network in the world. And for us, building a financial services company around that could take and harness the growth of the network, our customers, and the asset in our treasury, we could build something truly new. And following that path is not a straight line, because as we know, Bitcoin will throw a wrench into every plan. Into Eric's plan, it threw a 20% drop the day after he dedicated himself to Bitcoin. It happens to do that. It's the Bitcoin baptism. And so I think for us, we embrace volatility, and we've mostly done that as a private company. And I think there are companies around the world, private, that are adopting Bitcoin today without public markets. But it is a truly new game when you're a public company, the tools that are at your disposal where you can turn that up to 11. And the ability to harness its volatility, you can achieve levels that are truly amazing. You can start 12 months ago and declare a Bitcoin treasury strategy, and these gentlemen here have top 3, top 5 Bitcoin treasuries in the world. Fold today is top 20. And it's been a journey, but it's not a straight line to get there.
Well, we definitely owe a healthy dose of gratitude to Michael Saylor and Strategy. None of us would be here if it wasn't for him. He was a great inspiration to me, I'm sure to Eric, and also to Fold. And more companies are now coming to market with very similar strategies. Bitcoin is great because we all are in it together. We all want to grow together as a team. Having said that, we're also very competitive. And I think what's great is as more and more Bitcoin treasury companies appear around the world, there's going to be this great sense of urgency to acquire as much Bitcoin before the next guy does. And then for all of you out there who are looking to perhaps invest in Bitcoin treasury companies, the good news is now it'll be possible to compare and contrast. You can look at all the KPIs, look at the metrics, how quickly are people growing their Bitcoin per share, how long is the track record, how long are you buying Bitcoin, and how often are you announcing it. So those would be really good ways, I think, to be able to evaluate how your next favorite Bitcoin treasury company performs.
With both the tremendous success all of you have had raising capital from the public markets, with the flood of new deals that's been announced in the past month, with all the new entrants entering, do you think we're starting to hit a point of saturation for the institutional demand for Bitcoin? How long can this continue?
I think it's got a long way to go.
All right.
But we do need a lot of successful examples. Like, I think a lot of these companies need to succeed. I think that's really important. Our stock's up 100% in the last year, and we've had a tough run in our healthcare business. I can't imagine how well we would have done had our healthcare business performed, And so I think it's really important if people go out and do this that they really can perform, can put up the numbers, can show shareholder value creation. I think that my personal view is that it will be difficult. I mean, it's not an easy slog. It is much harder than it looks. Michael Saylor has made it look easy, but there's nobody like him, obviously. We all know that, and nobody can replicate what he's done. But I think that we are in a scale game. I think Simon's referring to that. There is a race to scale. Scale creates unbelievable opportunities, not for financing, for owning digital real estate. It's super important, and we are definitely accelerating our pace. We're up to about $500 million of Bitcoin over a year. We'd like to be much, much higher than that.
Bitcoin is a long game, and I think we just entered the Bitcoin century. And in a weird way, it feels like we're in a sprint right now. And to some extent, we're all going to win, stack as much Bitcoin as you can. But I think what we're going to see is various strategies starting to play out. What's not just going to win over the next quarter for your earnings, but what's going to win over the next decade. And we're not always going to be in frothy up cycles in Bitcoin. We will enter down cycles. And I think it's companies establishing a position, a point of view, a strategy to manage all of Bitcoin's volatility are the ones that will win over the long term. And for Fold, we are absolutely stacking as hard as we can now. We've increased our Bitcoin holdings in only 100 days by 50%. We intend to continue that. But at the same time, we're building a business that passively generates Bitcoin every single day through our normal operations. Our customers are saving in Bitcoin, spending in Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin. They're building their life around this asset, and we get to participate in that journey with them. And what we found that we didn't know what was going to happen, that what happens in the down cycles, what happens when Bitcoin is in the bear market, we found our customers double down. They stack more Bitcoin, they buy more Bitcoin. And for us, that meant that we've grown through every bear market. And I think that provides us a unique strategy that allows us to manage Bitcoin's volatility, not only in moments that are frothy, like right now, that we're all sprinting to gather Bitcoin, but also when we're outside of that cycle. And we'll be there stacking Bitcoin right amongst our own customers doing the same thing. Again, it's about long-term alignment with our customers in a way that allows us to fully embrace the volatility of Bitcoin with a low time preference.
I think we're still in the very early innings of the Bitcoin Treasury strategy. It's a Bitcoin gold rush. And so over the next, I suppose, 5 years, it's about accumulating as much Bitcoin as we can before it becomes unaffordable for most. I think most of the world still hasn't caught on. And the great thing about Bitcoin Treasury companies is that we're all finding a way to onboard more shareholders, more investors to Bitcoin that otherwise would not have been possible. Personally, I'm incredibly excited about our opportunity in Japan. I believe we can onboard 1 million, 2 million, 5 million Japanese into Bitcoin that haven't otherwise discovered it. And I'm so honored and humbled by so many US shareholders that have come up to me over the past few days. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you. I also wanted to do a shameless plug for Nakamoto. And I think the work that you and David are doing are tremendous, supporting Bitcoin Treasury companies in every country in the world. It's necessary, and it's wonderful work.
Thank you, Simon. We look forward to entering the public markets race alongside these gentlemen in short order and continuing to work together to stack Bitcoin here. So for all of those, for all of us following in your footsteps, as a management team, how do you think about creating volatility, or how should an investor think about understanding the types of volatility that you create in the balance sheet, whether that's with debt, convertibles, whether that's with Bitcoin yield, whether that's natively selling Bitcoin volatility?
I think it's critical, right? Especially when you want to tap into more accretive markets like the convert market, preferred market. It's really important to get that flywheel going, and volatility is a huge piece of that. Our volatility is 125%, which enabled us to...
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Enabled us to do a convert earlier this year that was widely oversubscribed. And so I think that's very important. I think one of the things that a lot of the newer Bitcoin Treasury strategy companies, the smaller ones, are going to have to face is that issue of creating volatility, but creating liquidity in your stock, enabling yourself to have options activity. All of that is so important to this flywheel concept, and it's very, very challenging to create, and it takes a lot of time.
I mean, only being 100 days into this, what I've appreciated most is that the spirit of open source and sharing amongst the community about these strategies has been incredible. Well, everyone could hide what has worked for them, but instead what we see Michael Saylor openly publishing his playbook. We see Metaplanet with their transparent dashboards. We see Eric showing up to every conference and openly speaking about his experience. And to me, it feels very much in line with the spirit of Bitcoin. And at the end of the day, it's a game that we're all going to win together. And as we see more of these treasury companies come to market, we're going to see more and more strategies deployed, new tools deployed, and I think we're only starting to see some of the big winners. And I think we are very grateful that we aren't the first through the door, and in fact, we get a little bit of a head start because we get to see what has worked, and we're looking forward to continuing.
I just want to end by expressing gratitude to everyone who's joined, not just us, but other Bitcoin Treasury companies on the journey. This is a brand new category of companies. The traditional finance has yet to understand what we're building. I think Bitcoin Treasury companies are grossly undervalued, and the traditional tools to value companies like ours just don't exist. And so MicroStrategy has now come up with some wonderful KPIs that we've all adopted. There are many more to come, but with your support, I think we're going to be the biggest companies in the world. Thank you.
Amen. One final note to end on, as we're almost out of time. Now that you guys are looking back on your first year, first 100 days, what is the one biggest lesson you've learned that you want to share with our audience?
Be ready for an incredible turnover in your shareholder base made up of unbelievably passionate individual shareholders who give you great feedback. That is such a massive thing to embrace, and it just means so much to have that.
I think Fold has had many people believe in us along the journey in the private markets, and what I'm most excited about is being able to share this journey with the rest of the world. And so I think the thing that I've learned most is this story needs to be authentic, it needs to be real, and it needs to be mission aligned with Bitcoin and the values that we're all here to spread around the world. And I think the more we stay true to that, the more the signal of Bitcoin, the asset, but the culture will permeate the world. And so it's be transparent and be authentic.
Very, very simple. Appreciation for your shareholders, communication with your shareholders, and transparency with your shareholders.
Stay humble and stack sats. Thanks, guys.
Naka Nation.